Cinderella. There was once a girl whose mother had died. When her father remarried, his new wife brought the two daughters from her first marriage to the house. These daughters took an instant dislike to their new sister. They threw everything out of her room into the attic. Instead of treating her like a sister, they made her do all the work. Even when she'd finished her chores, she wasn't allowed to join the rest of the family. Instead, she had to spend her evenings by the dying kitchen fire, warming her hands above the cinders, which is how she came to be called Cinderella. One day, however, the stepsisters received an invitation to a ball at the palace. They were thrilled. Everyone knew that the prince wanted to get married. Perhaps he would choose one of the ladies at the ball for his wife. The two sisters immediately began making themselves as beautiful as possible. Unfortunately, this was very difficult as, unlike Cinderella, they were rather ugly. On the evening of the ball, when her stepsisters had driven off, Cinderella sat in the kitchen quietly crying to herself. "What's the matter, Cinderella?" a voice asked. Cinderella sobbed. "I wish I could go to the ball myself." "And so you shall," the voice said. Cinderella looked up startled. A beautiful woman was standing beside her. "I'm your fairy godmother," she said. "Now, no time to waste, fetch me a pumpkin." Cinderella did as she was told. Her godmother touched the pumpkin with her wand, and it turned into a golden coach. "Now 6 mice," Cinderella got them, and her godmother turned them into horses to pull the coach. "All right," she turned into a coachman, and 6 lizards. She turned them into footmen to run behind the coach. Last, it was Cinderella's turn. One touch of the wand and her rags became a dress so magnificent it took your breath away. On her feet glittered a pair of glass slippers. "One word of warning, though," her godmother said. "Be home by midnight. At 12 o'clock, your dress will turn back to rags, your coach to a pumpkin, and your horses to mice. You don't want the prince to see that, do you? Now off you go and enjoy yourself." That night, Cinderella was the belle of the ball. The ladies, especially her two stepsisters, admired her dress and begged her for the name of her dressmaker. The gentlemen all wanted to kiss her hand and dance with her, but the prince fell in love with her at first sight. No one else was allowed to dance with her after that. The minutes whirled away, and it was only when the clocks began to strike 12 that Cinderella remembered she should be home. "Come back," the prince called, but away she ran. By the time she reached the street, her dress was rags again. All she had left was one of the glass slippers. The other was lost. She didn't know where. That night, Cinderella cried herself to sleep. She knew that life would never be so marvelous again. But that wasn't true. The other slipper had been found on the palace steps. Next morning, the prince went around the town from house to house begging women to try it on. "If I don't find the beautiful stranger who wore it last night, I'll die," he said. At last he reached Cinderella's house. The two stepsisters tried it on. No use, it just didn't fit. Broken-hearted, for there were only a few houses left, the prince was about to leave when he noticed the serving girl. "Madam," he said gallantly, "why don't you try it too?" "Her? Don't be silly," the stepsisters cried. But the prince insisted. He'd seen how beautiful Cinderella was, and of course the shoe fitted her perfectly. Spitting with rage and jealousy, the two sisters could only look on as the prince knelt and asked Cinderella to marry him. And she did, of course.